Economic development will be on the agenda over the coming years in several ways. Do you support the Plan 2012 vote to extend the current sales tax that helps fund economic development? What other methods would you like to see utilized to maximize our economic development efforts?
Before we get started, I want to introduce my wife, Rosemary, and she taught Bruce Sneed's son there, in 6th grade. Sales tax. I hear from all over the city that the taxes are too high. So when a person buys a vehicle, they pay city sales tax on that vehicle. And everyone's saying the taxes are too high. I'm the only candidate that lives in the east half of Manhattan, if you count Manhattan Avenue as a dividing line. When Bruce Sneed goes off the city commission, there won't be any representatives in the east half of Manhattan unless I get elected. But the sales tax hits people when they buy vehicles. And our economy is rolling along pretty good in Manhattan right now. If that sales tax did a lot of economic development, we've got the NBAF coming in, we've got all this north and south end development, so the economy in Manhattan is roaring along pretty good. So I'm more in favor of taking a better look at it and maybe just letting it sunset to unless Chamber of Commerce can convince me that it's really needed that much. The citizens that live in the east half of Manhattan say that taxes are too high. Can you do anything about the taxes? Thank you.
I do support the extension of the sales tax. It is tied in with the county and the roads and bridges, which I think is very important. Also, it's something that other communities do. And so to keep ourselves competitive with those communities, we have to be able to do similar things as well as being able to market the city well. Now, having said that, the devil's kind of in the details of what that money can be used for. That tax only passed by 80 votes last time. I think people have seen their taxes rise the past 2 years, 22% increase in property taxes, and they often see development come in and the developer get a check, and then there's some infrastructure around that's needed, and then they get a bill also for that construction. So I think we need to look at those other auxiliary costs that come with economic development and be able to offset some of those, or else I don't think it's going to be palatable to the taxpayer. The last forum, the Discovery Center was brought up, the fact that it may have a shortfall. I consider that an economic development initiative, and at least for a certain amount of time, I would think we'd want to use some of that money from the economic development funds to subsidize that, because again, I don't think it's palatable to raise property taxes to subsidize the Discovery Center, and this gives us another method to do that. As far as other things with economic development, I would like to see more of an issue on the local business end. You know, they're the backbone of the community. They're the ones on the booster clubs. They're the ones who sponsor the baseball teams. And also to look at some of the older areas of the community. What I don't want to see happen is us build all these new things and the older areas go dark or get shuttered. And often it's difficult because of codes in those areas. We can look at what we can do with that, as well as it may just take some extra money in those areas, and could we use some economic development funds to make sure that they remain viable.
Okay, I sort of agree with what John has said there, basically. I think that the tax itself, if we let it expire, just sunset, there's some problems there. I would like to see it passed again, but the wording needs to be changed so that it has much more flexibility. That the funds that are brought in by that tax should be able to be used for things like if the Discovery Center needs subsidized, maybe for debt reduction. I see the debt reduction problem as being big. We've got a fairly large amount of bonds that we're obligated for. If we could take some of that economic development dollars and move it towards debt reduction, I think that would have a effect on overall lowering our debt, but also would make the economic climate better for Manhattan. If we don't do that, if that tax just sunsets, if there are any shortfalls, they would have to come out of property taxes. I'm not sure where else the money would come from. And you know, over the years, I've read figures where it's been as much as $55 million has been put in economic development. And a lot of folks in town look at that and say, where was the return? I mean, during that same time frame, our taxes, real dollars that were spent, went up. And there should be some correlation there. So I believe that needs to be relooked and figure out how to put those dollars. Now, that doesn't mean that none of those dollars would ever be spent on economic development, the traditional model that we've used. The other thing I think we need to do is we've got a Discovery Center, we've got a great construction project out there to my right. We need to capitalize on that. That's an economic engine that can work. And indications are, based on the February returns on sales taxes, there's about 11% increase over last year. So it looks like that's headed that way. Let's keep it headed the right way.
I think the essence of the economic development tax is very critical because there's multiple pieces that go into how we develop new business as well as grow our existing business organically. Typically, the monies have been spent, at least from the public's perception, on businesses that are coming from outside. And it's because of the old model of utilizing incentives to draw businesses to Manhattan or to any community at large. In our case, we have some unique things about the community that I think are very critical. And one is that we have, I think, a very good quality of life. Our schools are good, we have the university, we have Fort Riley, we have great diversity, we have good parks. And I think part of what needs to happen with those funds, which I would support continuing the tax, is that we continue to enhance and grow our infrastructure. What that does is allows us to not have to utilize property tax money to any major extent, if at all, to get that to get those enhancements and improvements. As our community continues to grow in population, there's going to be other parks needs. And I think it's critical that we have the ability to build those without having to incur additional debts if possible. So we need to look at how we structure it and how we are able to utilize it. I like the economic model for incentives that we have. It creates a good competitive situation, and it focuses on higher paying jobs and jobs that are more suited, I think, for our community that may be less global economic driven, so that we don't see major swings in overall employment. So as a whole, I'm very much in favor of it and believe it's a good cornerstone for how we can continue to develop Manhattan.
The half-cent sales tax has been enormously effective. It was passed by the public in 2002, and that 42% of it went to the county, and the purpose of that was for roads and bridges. 56% of it went to the city, and we used it to develop job incentives. 2% of it went to the other areas around the county. So it's been very effective. How effective has it been? For every $1 that we put into the economic development funds, we've generated over $5 in capital improvements. We've done even better with the MVAC because we put in $5 million, and the federal government and the state government is donating $720 million worth of capital in building the MVAC building over the university or maybe university campus. So it's been enormously expensive. Now, in 2012, we have to face, we're going to vote on it again. And so what the City Commission and the County Commission has to do is to evaluate how effective it's been and how we have progressed over that 10 years and make the decision whether or not we're heading in the right direction or if we should alter that sales tax slightly. For example, should we put more of our city investment into quality of life and a little less into attracting jobs? Or should we keep it attracting jobs and a little less on quality of life? And that's something that the City Commission and the County Commission has to work together to decide. Economic development has been very successful, and it has been a boon to the city.